the same time that the Windsor family was in control of England, the Bush family was in control of the United States, and we went to war in Iraq against the Middle East, like a place that's ancient. They went there and they took like all this stuff out of their museums. Why? Like they weren't there just to kill, I forget his name.
Saddam
I was going
Hussein.
to say Bin Laden, but Hussein. Thank you. They weren't there just to take Hussein off the throne. They
Do
were
you know
there.
much about this? Because I've heard that they went there because of a certain technology that they had,
Well,
which
yeah, there's some thought that there was like a Stargate portal underneath the Baghdad Museum, and I don't know enough to corroborate that. Maybe it sounds to me like something the military threw out there to like a controlled hangout, like to get people off away from the truth, because there were some really fishy things about what they did at that museum. And I think the way that they control people from looking into that is by giving like a very sci-fi explanation so that the average person hears Stargate and they think, oh, that's nonsense. No need to look further.
yeah,
But
crazy talk.
yeah, if they heard maybe like stolen ancient artifacts, well, that's a lot more reasonable. You're not talking about something like we're not talking about like New York City here. We're talking about the cradle of civilization. There are ancient artifacts there for sure, and possibly some that may have like implications, global implications if they're translated. That's one thing that I think people don't quite give enough credit to is like we've taken for granted the Rosetta Stone as this translator of ancient text, and the guy who did that, like he was some French archaeologist. I'm pretty sure he was working for Napoleon Bonaparte. Like I don't know if he's the most trustworthy guy, and we've been taking all of our translations of ancient texts from that point on as his translation or based on his translation. So I'm no scholar to be able to like point out the intricacies there, but I do think that it's very easy for like a government to go in and say, "Oh no, we were just looking for a Stargate that didn't end up being there," and in reality, they're covering up maybe some information that politically would compromise the integrity of like I don't know the Constitution or maybe one of these governments in Europe. I mean, if you think about the American colonies and how they took the land here, it was unjust, it was unlawful, and I think that these nations have gone and done the best they can to erase any proof of anyone other than the Native Americans being in the Americas in order to justify that political sort of land claim. And how do we know the same isn't true with other places in the world where maybe there are documents or ancient things that would maybe compromise the sovereignty of a country like Saudi Arabia or like Egypt or like, you name it. Maybe Iraq say had like a tablet that said, okay, everything within this boundary is ours, right? And that's what they wanted to destroy, right? It's the same reason why China goes and builds artificial islands in the South Pacific Sea so that they can expand their border. I think that's a lot of what goes on in these conflicts is like land. It's the most valuable resource in the world is land, because what do you find underneath it? You find oil, diamonds. I mean, what you name it, there are things under the ground that are worth tremendous amounts of money. People are fighting over land all the time. I think ultimately, like, we don't have to go and like draw in these like crazy, not as probable scenarios to understand what's going on. Like the Stargate thing, I'm not opposed to the reality of a Stargate. If if Stargates are real, great. I think that's fascinating. I'd like to learn more about it. But it also requires a lot of information that doesn't necessarily relate for that to be true, which is why it's a good psyop, because people will then go and they have to prove that Stargates exist. They have to prove that, you know, Whereas if it's as simple as, no, the American military got paid to destroy some clay tablets because Egypt didn't want Iraq to have any sovereignty over the peninsula of Sinai, right? This part that's like super contested, that part right next to the Nile River. Maybe Iraq, in 5,000 years ago had like a city there and there was proof of it, and that could have politically changed something. And America's like, no, we'll go give us $500,000. We'll go bust that tablet up, And I honestly think that could be, behind a lot of our political, events, is like little secret sort of historical battles that we're not aware of because they haven't taught us the proper context in our history books.
You think this is a reason why the likes of Graham Hancock gets discredited for his work, and people are so rigid and won't sort of look into any other alternative theories to the standard theory that's being taught to everybody?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Graham, he's a fascinating guy. I think he's done a lot for archaeology. I don't necessarily go with the whole alien conversation. I'm interested. I don't negate it, but it's not. If I were Graham Hancock, it wouldn't be my immediate go-to. Although I'm not so familiar with Graham's work enough to say that he's always all alien, because he might believe that it were like more advanced humans in the past that were doing this kind of stuff. But I think that's ultimately what is going on, is they're trying to give us this idea that as human beings, we are the most advanced we've ever been. This is the peak. And because we're these, big apes who love to fucking fight, our progress has been war and boner pills, like that's the height of human achievement, is what we've achieved in 2023. And Graham, he goes and he says, no. We can't even build the pyramids today. We can't replicate Pumapunku today. We can't replicate the Bimini Wall today. So explain to me how people did this 500,000 years ago, or 20,000 years ago, or even 400 years ago. Coral Castle in Florida was built 50 years ago, and I can't explain that. This is a guy who's 5 feet tall. He's 60 years old, and he creates this whole little area out of coral, huge pieces of coral stone that weigh tons, and he's putting them on top of each other, building all these. If you haven't seen it before, folks, Coral Castle is really fascinating, and it makes me think maybe levitation is possible. And if that's the case, then maybe these cultures in the past, they had some sort of technology that allowed them to do that.
Yeah, because there's a theory, right, that they could have used, is it sound or the vibrations from sound or the frequencies to make things levitate?
Yeah, took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say, with the way our understanding of energy has changed just in the past 60 years. We went from what is it in joules, right? We understand force in measurements of joules, right? Which is like strength or something stupid like that, when everything is actually electromagnetic. I think that is so much more fascinating to see the world through that lens. And once we start to re-examine all the other, things that we think of the world that are kind of colored by physics, when we see that electromagnetism may be behind a lot of this stuff, I think that's going to shift the way we see like Graham Hancock's research, because it would make more sense that they levitated a lot of those stones into place. And if you understand how to manipulate the frequency of certain materials, they can become weightless. This is something that's been proven in laboratory settings with certain materials. They can make something that in all other environments would just be on the ground, it's now floating. how is that happening? Magnetism, electricity, and I guess, the structure atomically all play a role. So yeah, maybe that was what was going on at Coral Castle or the pyramids. They
Do
were.
you think perhaps the elites are trying to hide some sort of technology from the mass? That if the masses had control of this technology or could use this technology, it would take away the amount of control the elites have got.
Yeah, well, I mean, the number one thing they're hiding from us is the knowledge and understanding of our own mind. I think that's what they're constantly working against, is to keep people from understanding their own mind and the limitless nature of your mind. I think that's really what our society has done so well, is to give us this box that we're stuck in. And most people, unfortunately, they're happy in that box. Folks like us who listen to podcasts like this one, we broke out of our box years ago. It's the only way you can find a show like this, is having the intuition and the ears for it. I think shows like this can maybe wake someone out of their box, but for the most part, if you're in the box, it takes like your own soul. Your soul has to like get you out of it. And I think it's like a domino effect. The more people that kind of lose touch with their soul, the more people will lose touch with their soul in the future. And the opposite is true. The more people that can like maintain connection with their soul, the easier it is for others to get out of that box and connect with their soul. And as much as the media gives us this like picture of what America's like, I think, most of the world, not just America, is full of people who think outside of the box and want to make the world a better place. And the way that they keep us from making the world a better place is by constantly putting, I guess, compromised, because we're all human beings. I don't want to say some people are like, controlled, or, like these celebrities have no soul or something. They have a soul. They've just been, led down the wrong path. They've been led down a path that has made them into wolves among sheep. Has made them, these sort of wolves in sheep's clothing, kind of using us for their benefit. And I think that if they had the awareness to see that transparently, they wouldn't want to do that anymore.